Okay, I'm going to take you a bit of a landline journey. It's going to be a little bit of history, where sorghum started, what we're using it for now, and possible future uses of sorghum, specifically focusing on food and nutrition. Okay, sorghum originated in Africa 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. The largest diversity of genetics can be found there as well, not only in sorghum but in people as well. The second area is the Indian subcontinent, where there's history of cultivation back 4,500 years. Right? What's sorghum actually used for at the moment? Blending wheat flour with sorghum as a generic input. Once that blend has occurred, with or without flour, you can have fermented or unfermented breads, which are traditional styles, porridge, couscous, snacks, alcoholic beverages, beer, etc., that you're well acquainted with, flatbreads, cookies, cakes, malt drinks, and noodles, Milo. So you can see that it's actually being used in the food system already. That's all I'm trying to demonstrate. In Australia and most Western countries, there's a tendency to use it as livestock inputs, grown to forage, silage or hay, sorghum syrup, and ethanol production. Okay, bit of a longitudinal trend of production of sorghum since 1961. You can see it's peaked at about 90 million tonnes in the mid-90s, and it's sitting at about 60 million tonnes a year in terms of production. Where does Australia sit in the scheme of things? Well, the US on this graph is the highest, but I think Nigeria's just overtaken them. But in terms of the OECD, you know, our first world nations, it's certainly US, which is the big leader. Australia's around about 10 or 11, doing 2 million tonnes a year. Gives you a picture of what your yields, whether it's 12 tonnes per hectare or 3 tonnes a hectare, produces at the end of the day. When we start to look at sorghum production, if it's averaging between 40 and 80 million tonnes a year, approximately 16 to 32 million tonnes are actually used for human consumption. In the US, 30 to 40% is actually used for energy consumption, or rather energy production. And with this quantity of 1.5 million tonnes, the majority is used for food and seed. And it'll become self-evident what that 1 million tonnes actually goes into, which I'm leading you down. Okay, let's do a juxtaposition. Africa, South Africa, probably the lead nation, close enough to first world, that's doing something effectively with sorghum. You can see from this diagram that there's a couple of areas that they're involved in. They've got a fairly robust sorghum for food program, snack foods, beer, industrial malt, home brew kits, cereals, sorghum rice, sorghum grits. And that's just a summary of that again. So, you know, creating beer with 3% value plus, home brew kits, breakfast cereals, couscous styles, and further grits again for alcohol beverage, right? One of the big problems that we've got, and the challenge is the applied research challenge, is actually making sure that sorghum is milled appropriately, because the big problem of it transitioning into other markets, such as the food market, is that we don't really have sufficient experience with milling sorghum to the point of view where it can be acceptable. There are a couple of companies who are actually doing that, but they're keeping that information pretty close to their chests, okay? So when people say sorghum's not suitable, quite often it's got to do with the milled flour and not sorghum per se, okay?
Is it hard to do, or just?
Yeah, it's a harder grain. It's harder than wheat.
So it's not just a secret, it's just it's hard.
Yeah, there's no rocket science about it. It's about playing around with the machinery to make sure that you can produce the right mill size consistently, right? In Australia, it's a summer crop, you know that. You know it's used as a feed grain. You know probably pretty well that 60% of it is grown in Queensland and the balance in New South Wales. You probably know that that's the total hectareage in Queensland that we grow, about 700,000. You probably know that the average yield is about 2 to 3 tonnes a year. And you know that from all the talks the last couple of days that climate and environment plays a great deal. You might know that the world average production is 1.73 tonnes per hectare. And you might know that the US is 10 times that figure at least when it comes to yields, right? Human consumption in Australia, roughly about 100 metric tonnes a week are being milled and used in things like small goods market, gluten-free small goods, makes sense. So there's some fairly decent players doing that sort of activity at the moment and growing that. Significant pet food market, and has been for a while. Pet food market in Australia is worth $2 billion plus a year. That's a conservative figure, it's probably twice that. 1 million tonnes existing in terms of export, mainly to the PRC and Japan. The historical average is 500,000 tonnes, and the reason I put that figure up is because if you think about supply and demand, you're saying, oh, well, we're exporting 1 million tonnes because the Chinese are using it for alcohol consumption. If they decide they're not going to use it, it's probably going to drop back down to the 500,000 tonnes. So in your sensitivity, economic sensitivities, it's probably good to use that as a baseline, roughly. Other important point, 29 species of sorghums exist. There are 25 that are recognised. 17 of these occur naturally in Australia. That's important because it means that you've got 17 naturally occurring species in Australia which can be considered an ancient grain. And why ancient grain is important is because ancient grain consumption is growing at 20 to 40% per annum globally. So by shifting sorghum into that sector, it helps to move a bit faster economically. Okay, species by colour, you're probably well aware of it. You're probably well aware that we produce 1 to 2 million tonnes per annum, and you're probably aware that the value to Australia is about $500 million a year, total production. What is it mainly used for? Well, livestock. You can see there, beef feedlots are the major users of grain sorghum, certainly in Queensland. Right? So I'm not telling you anything new. Now we start to drill down. What have you got in your sorghum? Roughly 11% protein, 3% fat, 50 to 70% starch, rich in iron, rich in zinc, phosphorus and B-complex vitamins, tannins, antioxidants that may be associated with reducing cell damage and other diseases associated with aging. Is there an opportunity to leverage some of this stuff to actually increase the value of your sorghum that you're selling, or even the fractions of those? So let's talk about why they might actually want to buy sorghum because of its functional properties. That is, what is the perception that it imparts to food or a food system? It's slow digestibility. Slow rates of digestibility are particularly beneficial for people with diabetes. Slows down the insulin reaction, and because of the increasing rate of diabetes, people may wish to use more sorghum flour in their food products so that diabetics can eat it. Therefore, there'll be a demand on that perspective. It's gluten-free, so celiacs, obviously, it's perfect for celiacs. Resistant starch levels, for those of us who have colon cancer, raise your hand, 5 to times that of durum wheat, so it's an excellent source of resistant starch. Phenolic content, 3 to 7 times that of durum wheat, another health benefit which things are being sold on at the moment, and it also has cholesterol-lowering waxes. All right? So we know that the tannins produce poor digestibility. We know that poor digestibility or low digestibility is a negative for the livestock industry, but it's a positive for the anti-obesity industry. So if we can start to position that in the food system so it actually reduces obesity, there's going to be a demand and a run on sorghum for those sorts of inputs. Okay? Right, so we've talked about resistant starch, tannins, lowering digestibility. Let's step back and look at the whole grain. What can we do? At the moment we're doing this, animal feed, gluten-free flour and a bit of alcohol. There's juice and there's fibres. So in terms of the whole system of where sorghum ultimately would go, will it be in my lifetime, I'm not sure, but obviously ethanol, biodiesel, edible oils, chemicals and polymers, sweeteners. Ethanol again from the fibre, biocrude, chemicals and polymers, lignins, biomass pellets, animal feed, dietary fibre. So when you break down the grain in a systemised way, it's actually got a hell of a lot of value in it, right? And there are people paying attention to that because they need to be able to create new ways of making money in the economic system, and because the world economy is flat, we need to do something to create an upheaval in demand. Whether that be irrational demand or irrational demand, it doesn't matter as long as the demand is increased, right? All your talks up to this point have been rational. How much nitrogen do you put in to get an extra yield? I don't deal with that. I deal with how to make people buy more, which is not rational at all, okay? Okay, let's have a look at what are we doing. So from those possibilities, they're already producing molasses. Yes, they're doing it, not necessarily in Australia, but they're doing it in other parts of the world. They're already producing alcohol. Yes, that's what the Chinese are buying your grain for. They're starting to use sorghum flour as an anti-nutritive and as a health input product, gluten-free, etc. And it's mainly in the infant to the emerging industry, which is still growing. So there's an opportunity for you to maybe assess how your grain might be able to fit into this growing market. It's like that old story. You know, if I'd only bought Apple shares when they first started, I'd be a really wealthy man now. You know? So there's no use trying to buy Apple shares when it's a $700 billion company, because it's going to be too expensive to buy. And it's the same like infant industries. When you get in at the bottom line, you can grow with it and grow your market share and your experience base of how to work with those new industries. Pet food market, stock food, you're well aware of them. They exist already. Ethanol, you're aware of that. Dolby plant, that's roughly what you get out of per hectare from ethanol production from your sorghum. It's a market reality. These are the sorts of things that are not being worked on at the moment because the energy price has gone down because the world economy is a bit flat. Okay? So these sorts of things. Fermentation using algae, not happening, but in the medium to long term, it probably will be viable when the economy starts to kick up again and LNG and petrol goes back up to the prices that they will be. There's a tendency for food and energy prices to coalesce because they're so substitutable when you come to technology. And the long-term economic figure for that shows that that's the case. That's actually empirical evidence, which is rational. So other things, methane production from anaerobic production, yes, anaerobic digestion of sorghum, that's doable as well, but it's probably not going to happen in the short term. It will happen in the long term. Cogeneration and ignition of waste in boilers, not happening at the moment, but probably will happen in the long term. Chemical production, we need more research to establish what's actually in there. Fibres and textiles, some more work to be done to establish what can be used in the material sciences. Okay? Let's focus now on where things are going with sorghum in the food and nutrition area, because that's the big picture of what can be done with sorghum. Okay, there are 2,359 products listed globally that utilize sorghum as an ingredient, and of that, there are 2,384 variants. A variant is like vanilla ice cream versus chocolate ice cream. They're both ice creams, but they're variants. Okay? Of those 2,359 products, 2,245 have sorghum as the main ingredient. Right? The biggest producer of products using sorghum is the USA with 805. And remember the slide I showed you that had 1 million tons plus of sorghum? Well, they're using it. Okay? And this is up from 479 products, food products in the US in 2014, roughly about the same time that I gave this talk, or a similar talk last year. So it's doubled. So it means that activity hasn't decreased, it's actually increased with the use of sorghum, right? And that's an economic and a market decision and an investment decision. Right? What are the main uses of it? Bakery, pet food, baby food, cereals, alcohol's down the bottom. Market category, dog food's a big user of it, biscuits and cereals. The reason that dog food's a big one is because they can make some health claims around pet food, which you can't do with human beings at the moment. Big users of sorghum, sandwiches, cereals and energy bars, bread and bread products. Okay, that's probably the big area where the growth is. You can see this sort of sector of growth. That's across the world, right? As we start to drill down, given that there's a lot of health messages, what's yet to be explored? Clinical and nutrition using sorghum as an input. There's 0 products globally incorporating them at the moment. That means there's a future opportunity there. And probably the reason that future opportunity hasn't been addressed is because there's no clinical studies about the nutritional impact and health benefits. Only vitreous studies, laboratory trials. Okay? So sorghum is definitely an ingredient. Why do they use sorghum? Because they want to give you a health passive message about the value of sorghum. So it's perceived as being healthy in the marketplace. That's why they put it in their products, right? Convenience, obviously. And there's also an active health one, but it's coming up behind. All right, where are we now? Since 2012, the big users of sorghum have been in sports nutrition. This is the gym junkies, all right? 9 products have been launched since 2012, all incorporating nutrition. And those products tend to be around the $30 to $50 a kilo. So the health and nutrition products tend to be $50 a kilo plus, right? So what I'm basically saying is that they're starting with these, but they're ultimately going to go to health and nutrition. And they'll be utilising or needing sorghum because of those qualities that I suggested before, all right? Since 2012, this has been the growth in the cereal market for gluten-free inputs such as sorghum. Okay, so there's been a doubling. So even though the economy is not necessarily doing terribly well, they're still producing products to try and focus on this health market. And they're pulling in sorghum to actually deliver this as an input. All right, sorghum in the pet food market, health active, 331 cases. And that's the main reason they use it. And you can see here because it enhances the immunity to support long life expectancy. So a lot of pet food products, remember I was saying the market for pet foods in Australia is at least $2 billion a year, probably $4 billion. The reason they're using it is so they can make these claims, all right? Human claims. We're now stepping into November 2014, all right? And Sanitarium launched this product in November last year. Wheat-Bix is 96% whole grain, low in sugar, gluten-free. Okay. Whole grain sorghum, 97%, right? Its value, $9 a kilo. Gluten-free breakfast made with sorghum grains, low sugar, gluten-free, etc. Claim, allergy-free, antioxidant, gluten-free, low sugar. All those components that I suggested you need to know about the variables in your sorghum is what they're positioning this product at. They're also the world's first. They've built an entirely new factory, which is allergen and gluten-free. So they've sunk a lot of money into it, and they've just started signing contracts with the UK to start to sell these products into the UK. So they want to basically be the world suppliers of this product, and it's only a couple of months old. Okay.
Where's the factory?
I think it's in Brisbane, because the major sanitarium factory is down in Brisbane, just down at Rockley. But I haven't seen the factory yet. I have an intention of doing that.
It's actually
Okay. Oh, does it? Okay. So the takeaway message is health and nutrition supplements. That's where it's going. That's where your sorghum is going to go into. Extraction of resistant starch, because high levels of that actually help people with cancer. Extraction of antioxidants because of the health message. Extraction of oils, extraction of proteins, extraction of colouring agents, and more finer milling. I think if you've got your heads around some of those things, you'll sort of understand why you might be able to play arbitrage with getting a better price when they come knocking on your door, if they do come knocking on your door. Okay? This is the final product I'll put up. This is the current and the future. This was launched January 2015 in the US, and this is one of those gym junkie bars that I call them, roughly about $50 a kilo, incorporating sorghum. Okay? So sorghum crisps, etc. Allergen, gluten-free, high sources of protein, all that sort of stuff. So when you extract the protein from sorghum and then put it back into the product again, you're selling the protein separately. So you understand what I mean by extracting them all out? So what we do is we pull the protein out and then we reconstitute that in an ingredient plus the flour of the sorghum, right? So it's the same thing, we're just taking it out and fortifying it. Okay, so what can you do to be ready? Mill some of your sorghum, establish your resistant starch level, total phenolics, total antioxidants, total proteins, total carbs. That's what you need to do.